Lightbringer presents the Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire.
Dawn of Thrones 2018 discussion panel. Giants, the Children, and Beyond. Featuring Quinn from Ideas of Ice and Fire, Tony Teflon from Teflon TV, and Lucifer means Lightbringer from the Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire. All right, so thanks everybody for coming. We're here to talk about strange and magical creatures. Song of Ice and Fire. Center stage is definitely the humans. It's a low magic fantasy. The first book has barely any magic. We have the prologue, and we have the dragons waking up, and a couple of funky brand dreams. And the rest is like politics and medieval stuff. However, lurking around the margins, there are some strange and magical creatures, aren't there? And they are fun to talk about. So that's why we're here today.
No doubt about it. Because, you just can't have a fantasy story without creatures like that in it, And no, we don't have many. It's still, we get what we get, you know what I mean? And especially dealing with these children of the forest creatures and their interbreeding with the human race and everything else and all that good stuff. I guess we'll get into all that stuff if you believe in that.
Let's go ahead and
stuff
start
later.
with the children. I think they're the most important other race. We'll talk about Merlings later, but let's go ahead with the children.
Yeah, the children of the forest. Well, I was wondering, the audience, real quick, how do you guys? I have a different take. I don't like them at all. I don't like the children of the forest. I think
creepy
they're
little elves.
evil, creepy little
Black
things.
claws.
Do y'all like the
Beady
children? You
golden
think they're
eyes.
nice? You think they're cute? Yeah. Anybody else? They're creepy, right? These people got a cave full of bones, right? Just rolling around the bones. I don't know. Yeah, maybe so if you can and stuff. But the children of the forest are probably the most interesting of all these creatures. We have the most knowledge about them. When you say so, Quinn?
Yeah. I guess I can talk about where George R. R. Martin got this conflict between the children and the first men from. It's largely based off of pseudo-Irish history, actually. There's the conflict between the Sidhe, who are the children of the forest, essentially.
And by the way, that word is spelled S-I-D-H-E. So probably half of you are thinking Sidhe. That's why I've read it forever. It's actually she. That's the word, though.
So the conflict between the Sidhe and the Milesians. So basically you have the Sidhe, who were the initial inhabitants of Ireland, according to the mythology. And then you have the Milesians coming over from Iberia. And basically the Sidhe are like literally nature spirits. They protect trees and stuff like that. The Milesians come over and they start messing everything up. And there's a great war, basically. There's even a point where the Sidhe conjure up this giant storm and try to prevent the Milesians from coming to Ireland. And they end up making a pact, just like the children of the forest and men. And basically the Sidhe get the outer world and men get the upper world. So it's literally the exact same story.
It sounds really familiar, doesn't it?
Definitely does. But to me, the children of the forest are disgusting body snatchers. And that's basically what goes down to me. I hate them. And I do. And if you ever watch my channel, I diss them all the time. I'm quick to diss these children. Because everyone thinks there's like cute little Ewoks. And they're gremlins. They're bad. And I only believe that they came clean about this White Walker situation because they had to. Exactly. I think they would have kept that secret their whole life if they could have got away with it. But they have no choice right now to come out with it. So that's the reason why they did.
I think it's interesting and... that the idea that the children of the forest are actually like reptilian because they have cat's eyes, which lizards also have, and they have those black claws. And when the kids nicknamed the 6 children, one of them is nicknamed Scales. And I can't think of... The other ones all have literal, like, snowy locks, black knife, golden eye... Not golden eyes, but one of them is named after their golden eyes. And then we've got Scales. So... do they have like a little bit of scaly flesh somewhere? And if so, they sound like lizard people. They live underground like lizard people. They have black claws like lizard people, and they have reptilian eyes like lizard people. So that's a little creepy.
No doubt about it. And they make sacrifices to weirwood trees, right? So anyone who's willing to take your entrails, hang it in a tree and dance around it, right? Maybe that's cute to you, little girl.
Have a bowl.
Maybe it is, but I don't agree with that. You know what I mean?
Here, try the pate.
Because when you look at in the world of Ice and Fire and they bring them up, the first thing they say about them is that they came in conflict with every race they came across. These dudes, they fight everyone. So how peaceful can they be?
Wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
The giants and the children coexisted relatively peacefully.
Yes.
It wasn't until men got there and started literally chopping down, destroying their afterlife that they attacked, right? So it was men got there and literally started like cutting down their trees.
Well, they cut their trees down because they knew that the trees were spying on them. That's the reason
But you're
that they
on
did
there.
it.
It's pretty smart.
You just walk onto my land and expect me not to watch what you're doing.
Well, no, I don't. But if I put a house up, I don't want you peeping Tom
But you built
in my
that
house, right?
You built that house from like trees that you like got out of my forest.
Yeah, but how do you own the forest because you live there?
They literally are the forest.
Hold on. If you knew that people out there had technology to spy on you, would you put that piece of technology in your house?
Oh, wait.
Oopsie.
So I guess, it could be taken either way, but I do believe that it says clearly once they found out, they didn't know, they suspected that they were spying on them through the weirwood trees is the reason why they cut those weirwood trees. And children took offense to it because their cover was blown. They said, hey, we can't figure it out. But in the end, the children win that war because they eventually get the first men to change over to their gods, you know what I mean? And that's winning in the end. That's what people do. They always take people from other places and get them to turn over to their religion. That's about how do you get them under control. So they do win in the end, but in the beginning, the first one were right, you know what I mean? They're probably like, hey, these guys, how do they know this? How do they know these things that's going on all the time? And we see the children of the forest, they are peeping Toms, Blood Raven, peeping Tom, Bran, peeping Tom. That's where you get pushed out the window for peeping, right? You see what happens every time. You can't be peeping Tom. That's what happens. You know Blood Raven, what do you say? I watched you your whole life. I watched you when you were conceived. You said the whole thing, right? That's what's going on. Peeping Toms. You can't have that.
Oh, wow.
There is actually a quote. I was trying to pull it up, but it's not working on my phone. There's a quote from one of the famous kings of the Reach. I think it's Garth, maybe Golden Hand. And he talks about when the Andals came to Westeros. And the people in the Reach had a different strategy with the Andals, which is basically assimilation. And he talks about how instead of fighting them, we gave them our daughters and they gave us their religion. And now we coexist. And then basically he sums this up by saying, look, if the wolves come ravening and you kill them, eventually they'll come back. But if you keep one wolf and train it to guard your flock, now you've got something. And so when you have the children of the forest taking these human greenseers like Bloodraven or Bran and basically training them to think the way that they think, like preservation of the earth instead of the Iron Throne or the Seven Kingdoms, that's essentially the same principle. And so I think George is laying it out for us in the books there, just what you're saying.
No doubt about it. I agree with you on that concept 100%. We're dealing with these other children of the forest and their magical, mystical powers that they have. Now, the Hammers of Water, is that just an earthquake? Is that what that is, the Hammers of Water? Is it
Moon
something
meteor.
else? What is it?
Moon meteor.
Oh, you'd like to explain that, sir?
Well, so one of the islands in the Stepstones that's left, there's two named islands. One of them is called Bloodstone. And the guy that caused the long night and worshipped a black meteor is called the Bloodstone Emperor. So that's like one of a billion metatextual clues about it. But yeah, I mean, there was some sort of event where something mysterious came down and broke the land. It was a hammer that was called down. So, I mean, that's a pretty good description of a moon meteor. And moon meteors, not moon meteors, but any meteor or comet impact can cause that kind of destruction, to collapse a land bridge or something like that. So if it's not that, then it's children causing earthquakes. But it's just so far outside the realm of what we've seen from the children. I mean, I could see maybe, they can sing, so maybe sound, resonance, they make earthquakes. It's not like impossible, but we haven't seen the children do anything like that. And logically, the world of Ice and Fire gives us right out, it says, this doesn't make sense. Why would the children break the arm of Dorne after the first men had been crossing for centuries or millennia? It's like closing the barn door after the horses are out. What's the point? And the children of the forest ostensibly care about the land and the earth more than anything, especially people or even their own lives. So why would they destroy the land to save themselves? That's the kind of thing that mankind would do. It's not the kind of thing that the children would do, at least with the philosophy that we're presented of them. So I strongly suspect that the Hammer of the Waters is more a case of human green seers maybe like getting a hold of that green seer power and then doing horrible things with it. I think mankind is the protagonist of this story. So any sort of big disaster like the Hammer of the Waters, I think mankind is going to be at the root of it.
I hear you. I think it's the children. Everything. I think everything bad. Like even when you look at the Doom of Valyria, I think it's quite possible that
Did
they
you
could
have bad
something
dreams
bad.
about elves when you were a kid, or what?
I did. You know, there was a
Okay,
movie.
truth comes out.
There was a
That's
movie.
fine.
A Gremlin movie fucked me up. I wanted when I was a little boy.
My
Really
wife
bad.
doesn't like closets very much because of the clowns that live in there, so I get it.
You said you had a theory about that, Quinn?
Oh, about the children and the earthquakes?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like the werewood trees, right? So, like, what's that forest called where, like, it's one big organism?
Oh, Pando? Quaking aspen.
And there's also a fungus that goes underneath this facility. I can't remember the name of that.
Yeah.
We talked about that in the Black Chapter.
Yeah, totally.
They're all linked together. And there's a fungus that's supposed to be alive.
Yeah. And then there's, like, the concept of fungal intelligence. Well, I feel like if you look at every tree as, like, a modicum of just understanding, like, as a whole, if they're all connected, then it creates kind of a brain. It becomes a superorganism. And I kind of see the children and the trees as kind of being in some kind of symbiotic relationship. And the children, literally, when they're sacrificing, they're feeding these trees. Like when Bran is inside of the tree, when he's having his visions, when the woman sacrifices the man, he can taste the blood. The tree is feeding off of the blood, right? So I think that it might have just been, well, in the world of Ice and Fire, it says that the children gathered on the Isle of Faces, right? Mm-hmm. And they either sacrificed a bunch of men or they sacrificed their own children. And I think that what happened was they do this, the roots are connected, and maybe the roots shake, and that's what breaks the world, basically. It's called the breaking of the world.
Yeah, that kind of makes a certain amount of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the roots run all through Westeros.
Mm-hmm.
So you believe that since there is not a lot of blood sacrifices going on, that their powers have faded due to this?
Yeah. Okay, the children, I'm pretty sure that the children created the others. And before the show even revealed that, because George R. R. Martin described the others literally as frozen she. Like, that's a direct reference. So
Because she are one of their, you could see them as sort of like tree gods or nature gods. So calling the others icy she is saying that they're frozen tree spirits, essentially, to oversimplify.
And a distinction between the children in the show and the children in the books is that in the books they only live a couple hundred years. So the children that made this deal with mankind would have been dead by the time of the Age of Heroes. So it's a new generation of children. And what are they seeing through the trees? They're seeing mankind prospering while they're confined to the deep woods. They got the short end of the stick. So I think they went off, at least some of them did, they created the others with some magic they found in the north, in the heart of winter. And it just went really wrong, and even they couldn't contain it. And
you can see, like, the fact that the children possess dragon glass, which is the antidote to the others.
Yeah.
You can sort of see a scenario where they would have made them thinking that they could control them with the dragon glass, but then they didn't maybe anticipate them being able to raise the dead.
Yeah.
And then that the ability to raise the dead is the thing they didn't plan on.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, the dragon glass doesn't kill them. What do we do? Now we're effed.
yeah, because in the show, like Leaf, when Bran says you created the others, she says we were at war. It's not true if you look at the lore. The White Walkers came during a time of peace, during the Age of Heroes. They were not at war. So
Exactly, and that's why these children are dubious. So let me tell you how I feel what happened. So they made this pact with men and got them to agree with it. And then that was just them buying time. And then they found out a way to create these White Walkers, and then they unleashed them. When the White Walkers just about won the war, right? They ran through cities, hold fast, they captured everything. They had it just about won until the last hero has to go out and search for what? The help of the children. So here they are. Oh, you're going to search the children. We're going to help you out. You come to us finally. We're going to help you out. And then they get the help from these guys and then conquer the White Walkers, and the White Walkers go away. And I think that's why the White Walkers are back now, because they're like, yo, we're here doing your bidding. You turned on us, and now we're coming for you. And they don't have enough numbers to protect themselves because they live long lives, but they don't have a lot of numbers. And if you look at the Children of the Forest's MO, the body snatchers, which means basically they have other creatures fight for them, right? That's their MO. They don't want to fight. They don't want to lay hands on no one. They want to put champions out there, whether it's wolves or birds or whatever they want to walk and put into. So I think that's how they have no one to protect them. So they said, listen, we can't stop these things. The only thing we can do is tell mankind, tell Bran exactly what we did. And I think that's why they're out there.
you have to wonder, like, where were they that whole time during the long night?
Yeah.
Like, it's like they're...
Go ahead.
Yeah. Like, where were they? So it seems like they were just kind of letting it happen. And it wasn't until like the clock struck 13 and like shit really went south that they just showed up again, and they were able to, because it says they swept over Holdfast and kingdoms and cities, and everyone was just totally slaughtered. And all of a sudden, completely turns around. So they obviously had some tool or some mechanism.
Yeah, and it says the last hero searched for years,
Yeah.
even, for the children. So
They were
it's
just letting it
They
happen.
were hard to
Of course,
find.
they were waiting.
Yeah.
They were letting it go down. So then we're going to be the saviors of the
They
realm. We're going
clearly
to
had the
save
power
you.
to stop it.
Yeah. We're going to save you. Now we'll save you. And then these guys, you after we save you, then, you respect our stuff. And probably, man, didn't respect it. Saved them, and man went right back to doing what they were doing again. You know what I mean? And that's probably what happened.
What do you think the help was that the children of the forest gave to the last hero to help it turn the tide?
Most likely dragon glass and a way to kill them, a way to kill the White Walkers and stuff like that.
What about the
dragon
living
glass
dead,
tips.
though?
Well, see, it's so weird because the show confuses me, because you see the dragon glass killing these living dead, but I don't believe that's the way it's supposed to be in the book. It's only supposed to be the fire.
yeah, I guess we should make that clear. In the books, dragon glass only works on the others,
That's
and the whites are not killed by dragon glass. The fire works well. But
So, they could give a wildfire, maybe, and they could have gave them a couple of different things, techniques probably.
So it's a little bit of a leading question. One of the things that I think the children of the forest might have done for the last hero is raised him from the dead. Because we were told that he set out with 12 companions who all died. And then the last hero is alone and beset by the others, and then all of a sudden he's a champion. But what do we have? We see Cold Hands north of the wall, which in the show is Benjen. And thank you. And so we've got this idea of an undead person ranging the north, fighting for team life. So we've got zombies fighting against the White Walkers. I think, of course, Martin loves echoes, so it's possible that originally we had a dead last hero and dead companions that became undead companions. Because there's no one, as I love to say, there's no one better suited to journey into the cold, dead lands than someone who doesn't need to eat, sleep, be warm, take shelter, etc., etc. You're pretty much the perfect person to deal with that. So, zombies everywhere.
Go ahead.
So how does the
Exactly.
talk about the books, but how does Knight's King and Knight's Queen fit into kind of this timeline or this?
All right, so he's asking about the Knight's King and the Knight's Queen. How do they fit into this timeline in the story? Would you like to take it?
Go for it.
Well, see, it's so confusing. Because in the show, the Night King is the leader of the White Walkers, but in the book, the Night King, the Night's King legend is something totally different. He was the 13th commander of the Night's Watch. And so this is after the wall was already built, so they'd already fought the White Walkers. So he was the 13th Lord Commander. He went beyond the wall. He saw this ice woman, I guess, and she took his soul, and he declared himself king of the Night Fort. And it got so bad that literally the king of the wildlings and the king of winter got together to stop these guys. So it's a...
So I actually have a somewhat heretical theory about Night's King and the timing. In fact, the timeline is one of those things where I feel like George is inviting us to question it. Because, we've got 8,000-year-old myths. What do we know about what happened 8,000 years ago? All we know is like tree rings and geological stuff. We really don't have any idea about human culture. Very, very little. Very, very little. And when we say idea about human culture, we're talking about, we can tell that Japanese people made pottery in 15,000 BC because we found the pottery. Do we know who their names were and what kings they had and what order the kings lived? No, we don't have any clue. So really, George R. R. Martin is giving us more specific myths than we should have about the timeline of 8,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And so given the myths that we do have, I think we have to consider the idea that the order of these events could be flipped around, and we have to follow sort of the clues. So Knight's King and Knight's Queen were sacrificing to the others. That's one of the things that they're said to do. Now, we've seen people sacrifice to the others before with Craster. And what does that mean? It means he's giving his male children to be turned into White Walkers, somehow. The process in the books might be different than the process in the show, but the point is, sacrificing to the others means making the others. And so now we have this idea of Knight's King and Queen making others at the wall. So the trick is that it sounds like he lived after the long night because he's the 13th Lord Commander. But that could easily be worked around. Like, what if the Night's Watch was an elite fighting force during the long night before the wall was built? They lost 12 commanders, and the 13th was the guy that won the war. And so he said, I'm the 13th commander in honor of his 12 dead companions, for example.
That's the thing about the long night. It lasted a generation. It says people were born, lived, and died all in that time. So
There's a lot, there's a lot of room for a lot of commanders to die. I mean, in one battle against the others, you could go through several commanders. So there's a lot of wiggle room in the details, and I'm not convinced of any of my like hardcore theories about the timeline. I mostly just like to pose alternate possibilities. And if we've got this figure called Night's King creating White Walkers near the time of the Long Night, I think there's a lot of clues to say he actually was the king of the Long Night. I mean, he's Night's King. He's the king of the Long Night, making White Walkers during the Long Night. So I actually think that this is the origin story of the others in the books, potentially. I'm not, not canon, but I think that's possible.
And Knight's Ford is known for having many terrible things happen there, and a lot of it, I think, has to do with these damn children of the goddamn forest. Again, I mean, let me give you an example.
How do you feel about Merlings, Tony? Do you hate them too?
I'll give you an example, all right? There's a guy in there, he's named Mad Axe, all right? Now, supposedly this guy is called the Mad Axe from the Night Fort. He goes around, and with an axe, he kills all of his brothers, right? Kills them all. And he's mad, he's crazy. But he wasn't crazy enough not to take his shoes off before he did it, all right? Now, I would think if somebody is crazy and went around killing someone, you wouldn't take your shoes off. If you were going to kill someone, you were at the trial, all right? And the judge said, did you kill these people? And like, oh, I'm pleading mental insanity. But yeah, bro, you took your shoes off before you crept around. You're going to jail for the rest of your life, right? So I think a lot of things that happened there are the children of the forest walking these people, taking control of them. And then they're doing these things. And no, there's no other way to explain it. People don't believe that's happening, so they say he just went crazy. And that was it. But you don't go crazy and take your shoes off before you do a murder, right? Yeah, no one does that, right? You know what you're doing then, right?
In terms of like the animosity of the children of the forest, I think in a certain way it can be understandable, because if the weirwood trees are all connected and are creating this sort of gestalt memory for the children of the forest, and those are their gods, like, then that animosity is understandable.
Yes.
Because at that point, the natural outcome of human nature is for them to lobotomize your deity.
Your ancestors, your godhood, yeah, absolutely. Certainly.
And it's not just their god, it's literally their afterlife. When they die, they live inside of those trees.
It's like killing heaven.
Yeah.
Like they're
It's pretty bad.
Down the gates of heaven, building their houses from the wood.
There's no bigger abomination to the children of the forest.
Sacrifice to the trees may not have been a bad thing.
Yeah, because you're living another... When Varamir Sixskins dies in the prologue of A Dance with Dragons, he bleeds onto the tree, and for a second he is literally seeing through the eyes of the werewood, and then he's everything. He's the woods, he's the animals, he's like everything in existence. So yeah.
I believe that is because he had walking ability, he had powers, green scene. If you're a regular person, you get your throat slit. You ain't going into the tree, you're just dead, right?
I mean,
so
maybe.
getting sacrificed is getting sacrificed.
I'm not so sure of that.
Huh? Or the first men may not have known that, or that their gods lived in these trees, or believed them. If someone came to you and said, listen, don't cut down this tree, my gods live in here, my ancestors, who's going to really believe that? Why would they just believe that, the first men, I think they would be skeptical about that, So
Well, I think everybody's justified for killing each other and hating each other.
Yeah, I guess so.
They have their reasons, at least.
Everyone, yeah, it can be, anyone's going to have a reason why and justify for what they do, you know what I mean? There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure the children were upset that they were cutting down their trees, but they were also using those trees as spine. All right, so that's the way it goes.
Well, tactically, it was smart for the.
It was very smart. It's great.
I feel like they have a right to. I can put cameras in my house,
So to your point, though, there's also the question of is a lot of theories running around that to give a weirwood tree a face in the beginning requires blood sacrifice. To give a tree its eyes, for example. And I always wonder about, okay, so look at the weirwood tree. It's got this bloody face, bleeding out the eyes. They look like to be screaming, usually angry, occasionally laughing like cruelly, but usually they're very terrifying expressions being seen on these trees. So you have to wonder, do the trees like having green seers inside them? It's kind of like a mutually parasitic kind of a thing. It's pretty dark. It's possible that this is an alteration. I tend to think that the children of the forest, might have been able to use the trees as their repository without faces, without sacrifice, and that there was this change so that humans could access it. And that has to do with all the blood sacrifice and the faces on the trees.
This is like a Preston Jacobs idea, but I know he did this video about one of George R. R. Martin's story. I think it was a song for Leah. I haven't read it, but basically there's like this psychic entity that's like a hive mind.
I think it's the Grishka.
Okay, and it couldn't find, I forget how it is, but it couldn't get like a certain, I think it couldn't get humans until it absorbed a psychic human, right? Yeah.
Right, and it's this. A lot of the dragon bond theories run along the same lines. So there's some initial blood sacrifice to create a blood link between the dragons and the people, so that their ancestors could then have that connection or something. Yeah. And so it's kind of like maybe the first green seer, human green seer, is that person Bran sees getting their throat cut, and then they go into the tree, and now all the Stark descendants of that sacrificed person can now bond with that tree or something like that.
Yeah, I think that scene shows that Bran can affect the past. You know what I mean? Just like you've seen in the show with Hodor. I think that scene is showing he could taste the blood, he can affect the past, and eventually something like that's going to have to happen. That's off topic, but that's what I think that scene shows.
Bloodraven definitely lied to Bran.
He's a liar.
Yeah.
They say, old Nan says, don't trust crows. All crows are liars.
She does say that.
And old Nan ain't wrong. You got to go with everything she say. It's the truth. And that's what it is.
She has a question.
So she's raising the question of Garth the Green and his son Brandon of the Bloody Blade. Brandon of the Bloody Blade was said to have slaughtered thousands of giants and children of the forest at Red Lake, whereas Garth Greenhand is pictured as very copacetic. He plants 3 weirwoods at Highgarden. So Brandon of the Bloody Blade is cool because George is strongly implying a sexual metaphor with the Bloody Blade. Because in the crypt scene with Barbary Dustin and Theon, she sits there and talks about Brandon loved to hone his sword, and the sight of blood on his sword was just the best thing for him. And the night he took my maidenhead, he liked that too. And so we've got this idea that the bloody sword is actually an impregnation metaphor. So then we've got Brandon, this guy named Brandon, obviously a Stark ancestor, running around giving the bloody blade to children of the forest. And then we have this other legend, Rose of Red Lake, another child of Garth the Green. All her descendants are skin changers. She lives in the same place, Red Lake. So maybe what we actually have is ancient human children of the forest crossbreeding, and now we have skin changers in that area. So the bloody blade and the sacrifice, it's tied into the propagation and the idea of mankind tapping into the weirdness. So.
Yeah, the one guy was putting a hand through the chest, right? Who's that guy who was putting his hand through the children's chest, pulling their hearts out and something? I forgot his name, the one guy who was doing that. I liked him. He had the right idea.
Brandon of the Bloody Blade, there's your new avatar. Tony of the Bloody Blade.
Yeah.
Men aren't innocent, though. I mean, men came to Westeros and everyone just started going extinct. It wasn't just the children. It's like the unicorns, the giants, like so many different beasts.
Yeah, dude, if you kill unicorns, you're bad.
I mean, yeah.
It's very clear.
Are they really unicorns, though? They're kind of...
I mean...
Are they? Are they unicorns?
Yeah, Shaggy Dog saw them. Yeah, the goats with long horn.
They're goats.
Close enough.
They ain't goats.
Unicorn technically means
it's just
one
like
horn,
Chris
so.
Rock said back. It's the goat. That's not an Indian. That's a Puerto Rican with a feather. I know a Puerto Rican when I see one. I know a goat when I see one. There ain't no unicorn. It's just a goat, and that's it. That's the way it goes.
That's the Tony Teflon flavor that only Tony Teflon can bring right there.
But they're extinct, though. That's the point. Like, men are killing everything.
Yeah, they're extinctors.
Yeah, we do.
It's an environmentalism metaphor, Tony. Just go with it.
But I guess, everything's has its time. Men will have his own time to rule. We weren't here forever.
Everyone's
we'll
evil in this story,
right?
pretty much.
Yes,
so, except for Sam and
Sam,
Gilly and
Sam is good.
2 people.
Hot pie.
Hodor, right?
Hot pie. Hot pie, right?
Okay, let's see. Questions? Any some questions that we have missed? Anybody that we've been ignoring right there in the middle?
Talk about the squishers, please.
Thank you. Yes, squish, squish.
Go right ahead.
The Deep Ones. Now, they're taken directly from Lovecraftian lore. The Deep Ones, they worship Dagon, they worship Cthulhu in some stories. And basically, I think that all the legends about the Merlings and the Squishers, they're all the Deep Ones. The Deep Ones have artifacts all over the place. Toad Isle, there's this big, like, toad that's made out of this black stone. And the
Thousand Islands have fish people. Toadstone has fish people.
Like fish people, so they've obviously bred with people. In the stories, they rape women.
And then on the Three Sisters, they have the web fingers. They call it the mark of the Borels.
And then Maester Therion thought they existed. He compared the black stone at the base of the high tower to the sea stone chair, which they just found, by the way. The sea stone chair, they just found it there.
Yeah, that's creepy.
So, yeah, the Deep Ones are super interesting. Yeah.
So my favorite Deep One's tinfoil, and I'm going straight for the tinfoil. So before the Arm of Dorn was broken, the Summer Sea, which is like, I don't have a map. So before the Arm was broken, basically the Shivering Sea in the north and the Narrow Sea were separated from the Summer Sea and the west, the Sunset Sea. So what we obviously had was two different kinds of Merlings that were separated, and when that bridge came down, we basically had a Merling-Selkie civil war under the sea. That's
Under
my
the sea.
tinfoil.
Oh.
No? Okay. I don't believe it either, so. But there are clues that, like, the black-scaled mermaids in the North Sea are somehow a little different, so that's kind of where that comes from.
No, you think we're gonna see squishers?
Well, there's dead things in the water at Hardhome in the books, so that's, like, probably my pick for the creepiest line in all of the books. Dead things in the water. What does that mean? Somebody.
Yeah,
do we even want to know?
I don't know.
I don't know if we'll ever actually see them on screen, but they certainly exist.
Yeah, I think what Martin is doing is essentially like he's telling you that the fish people are real. I mean, there's way too much evidence that there are fish people. I don't think the fish people are going to be super important to the end of the story. I don't think we're going to get a Squisher army marching out of the sea to fight the others of the last battle or something stupid like that. However, George couldn't figure out a way to really put the Squishers in the story except for just to give us ancient clues or whatever about the
about what they've done in
like
the past.
the far winds and interbreeding and stuff. But
Yeah.
he likes them so much. You can tell George loves the Squishers. I mean, read the Nimble Dick monologue on Squishers. This is great writing here. This is George's heart and soul being poured out.
He's a huge Lovecraft fan. The entire Ironborn religion is pulled straight out of Lovecraft. It's really interesting.
Should we all start cheering wildly to make people think there's something really exciting?
Yeah. Cheer!
Let's see what
Give it
happens.
to him. What about these?
Will we see a Kraken?
Is that what Euron's doing? You think Euron's doing all these blood sacrifices in the water to raise a Kraken?
I think a Kraken is happening. Yeah, there's a mention in a Daenerys chapter.
Can we do
Kraken
a show of hands? Can we do a show of hands? Who thinks we're going to see a Kraken?
Yeah, let's cheer for that.
Yeah.
Krakens!
There we go.
I don't know if we'll see it, but it clearly has been cited.
Yeah.
Because Verities has reported it, and everybody's just.
I think it's happening.
The fact that everybody's blowing it off makes me wonder if maybe there will be some.
Look, you don't hang a Kraken horn on the mantle if you're not going to take that motherfucker down and blow it.
All right. Yes, sir.
I think the Kraken's
Yes, ma'am.
coming.
Okay. Oh,
Patch, some of the things that Patchface talks about, or he really saw when he was under the sea, or he's just
Patchface is just it's so weird with Patchface. I think
Finish the question. Do we think Patchface is what?
so when he talks about things that he's seen under the sea. I know he's sort of mixing it up with his simple mind or whatever, but he also is sort of prophetic as well. That he saw something under the sea that's
Yeah.
him, and
So I think that George Martin really likes this idea of if you start to open your third eye and see into the spirit world, it sort of disconnects you from the real world. And so we see these
Lovecraftian.
people, yeah, it's very much a Lovecraftian concept. It's like the Lovecraftian concept. And so we see people on different sides of that spectrum where they're like Theon, for example, he's been tortured and broken down so much that he's starting to hear the gods' voices. It's like this trauma did it to him. And then we have Patchface, who's only barely connected to the real world, and he's seeing all of these visions. So, but I will tell you that on the Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire, which is my podcast, we didn't really introduce ourselves, but we will be talking. I'm going to do an entire series about the metaphorical symbolism of the Squishers and everything that Patchface sees under the sea, because it's actually a metaphor for the Green Sea, as in the Green Seer's Sea. So everything that happens under the water is actually happening inside the weirwood net. For example, under the sea, the crows are white as snow, But the crows, white crows, well, those are others, because the crows and the others are like twin brothers. And white, black crows are the Night's Watch. White crows would be others. And the others come from the weirwoods. They're called the White Walkers of the Woods. They're icy she, which means they're tree spirits. They are tied to the weirwoods. The show didn't really go into detail, but that guy is being stuck with that blade against a weirwood tree. So this is a weirwood thing somehow. So I won't go any farther into that, and it's a big credit to somebody called Ravenous Reader who contributes to my podcast. She discovered this whole thing, and it's like mind-blowing. Any scene where there's underwater stuff going on, like just start to think about green seers, and it's going to just blow your mind. So we're going to do a whole series about that.
Patchface. So like the Ironborn, they drown themselves and resuscitate themselves as a way of becoming more connected with their god. But Patchface is interesting because he really drowned. He died. He was given to the drowned god and returned. So I think that perhaps, I kind of have this idea that there are forces in this world that kind of balance each other out and work against each other. I think that Patchface might be the thrall of some kind of entity, or at least not even a conscious entity, kind of like an abstract force that just has a
Lovecraftian sort of presence,
Yeah, I think when they deal with Patchface, I think he's being walked. I think that some green seer is giving him these things, and he's just putting them out there the way he sees them. That he's given, but he's been given this, whether it's Blood Raven or someone like that.
It's basically
he's the one giving him, telling him what it is, and he's coming out and making the jingle with it. But I think
there's precedent for that because we've seen that Hodor, a simple-minded person, is easier to take over.
Yes, and when you see like in the Vlad Sixkin chapter, when he tries to take over Nettles, right? And he tries to get him. She's ripping out her mouth. She bites her tongue out, and she gets a bloody smile, just like a weirwood tree, right? So we see Melisandre has a vision about Patchface with blood all over his mouth. I think what's going on there is Shireen's being sacrificed at this time by Melisandre. He flips out, and someone's warging him. He's fighting it off, and that's why he also has the bloody mouth at that particular time. That's why she says that guy is dangerous. Get away, because he's going to lose his mind when Shireen gets burnt, and he's up at the wall with her. That's his girl. That's the only friend he has. He's not going to take it very well when she gets burned in the end.
That creature is dangerous.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between giants and the children of the forest, and maybe the histories of the giants?
You want to go with that, Quinn?
Yeah, well, we don't know a lot about the history of the giants, actually, because they never wrote anything down. But I think that...
You're talking about the line where it says they were our bane and our brothers. So, in what sense are the children and giants brothers, right?
Yeah.
Well...
I know they coexisted peacefully before the first man.
Or at least if they quarreled, they did so in a way that created an equilibrium. Nobody was wiping each other out.
There wasn't straight out war. There was they fought
conflicts.
There was conflict. Because it's just two different species, two different cultures. Just think about how different it is for just people to live together. Imagine two completely different species.
So they both sleep with humans. Right?
That's true. Although there's limitations genetically on well, okay, I won't go into that. The giant has to be the female and the human has to be the male.
Yeah.
But the stone giants, the Jogwin in the northern Bones Mountains. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone,
For the yellow guy, the yellow prince or whatever in Essos, did they have?
Gogor the giant, right?
Yeah. Well, no, there was a little giant that he had battle and then have sex with women for his beauty pleasure.
Which tale is this?
That was in, I believe it was talked about in Dance of the Dragons. It was when Tyrion was on his, when he was part of the slave.
With the freaks?
Slave, it was told to him.
Wow, you stumped me.
that doesn't happen often. Well, I tell you that. Not this dude right
So
here.
one of the weird things about giants and children is that the giants we see are very animal-like. They live in caves. Their weapons are like big tree trunks, and they throw sticks, and they're very primitive, like very large Neanderthals. Not even as smart as what we think Neanderthals were. However, there's this weird story about Princess Teresa who was imprisoned in a castle by evil giants who lived in a castle. Who were they? Giants that live in a castle. I mean, it could just be a nonsense story, but it does make you wonder if there were some other type of tall beings human giant hybrids or taller elves or the green men, who are the green men on the Isle of Faces. They're not quite elves, but they're green, and have something to do with antlers and weirwood trees, but it's very vague. So I actually think, this is one of my little tinfoils, is that there was another type of giant or tall being that some of the giant legends are actually talking about that aren't the giants we see today. So I will eventually put out a tinfoil video about that.
In the Barrowlands, the first Barrow King is supposed to be a giant. And
a lot of clues about Garth being a giant himself. And Garth is basically a green man, so...
Well, when I think Yellow King, I think True Detective. But yeah, there was a yellow. Yeah, there was a yellow. He was a wealthy or influential person in Essos, and I well, mentioned $1 million. He had a giant that they used in combat, like a gladiator. But then he also had sex with women. It was all for the viewing pleasure of it.
So we have an example essentially of potentially creating giant human hybrids, or.
But it could also there's that race of people who were tall, and they also wore like the stilt.
Thank you. That's what I was missing. So there are like 3 different stories about very tall humans. The people on Leng are up to 8 feet tall. The people from Lorath before.
Oh, yeah.
They were like their skeletons are 8-9 feet tall, not giants, but clearly taller than humans. So there's definitely evidence that there are tall beings other than the very dumb giants that we see. And so when we have what's that?
The Cleganes,
Right, Hodor. Exactly. So I have to wonder if some of these stories about the giants being the brothers of the children of the forest are talking about maybe a slightly different kind of
Well,
giant.
the book giants, the northern book giants, are like Sasquatches.
Right, exactly.
They're like totally covered in hair. They're nothing like the way they were portrayed in the show. So.
Yeah.
What about dragons? Anyone like dragons? Anyone like dragons? You want to talk about dragons a little bit? You know, we ain't got
We
much
just did a whole
time.
panel on dragons.
You did?
In this very room.
Oh my God, Jesus! Right before this was the dragon. Oh Jesus Christ!
Anyone else have questions about squishers? Squisher only question.
You like squishers?
Kofi's daughter, talking with her last night, and she had an interesting thought, looking at going back to the drowned men ritual of kind of resurrecting a person after they drown is very reminiscent of the kiss of life with the Lord.
Yes.
So there's maybe the idea that there's just like an underlying magic,
Yeah.
and then it gets pulled through different forms. Like you guys-
So the question was, he's talking about the idea that magic, maybe there's one kind of magic that manifests through different forms, because the way that the Ironborn are resuscitated is very reminiscent of the Melisandre's kiss of life. Or I guess it's Thoros that gives it to Beric and then Beric to Stoneheart. But it's a R'hllorist tradition, the kiss of life. So it's almost like the same ritual, except for we're using different mediums. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think it's just all blood magic, blood sacrifice, and people view it differently. You know what I mean? It's like I don't think that there's all these different gods. I just think it's just this one dude in this tree. I just think it's this blood raven dude, and he's just affecting everyone. When Melisandre looks into the flames and stuff, them flames are blue. You know, well, why? Why are they blue? Why they look like the blue from the White Walkers? Why would they be that if it's R'hllor? I think all this stuff, it all comes down, especially when she sees him in a dream and she's afraid, she says it straight up, you know, sleep is nothing but whispers from the great other, you know, and then she sees Bloodraven, she sees Bran, but she says it can't be them because they're not ugly enough.
So, Tony, if Bloodraven runs the world and the children are evil and bad, and
they are.
So what's the Bloodraven children relationship then? What's going on there? Are they taking advantage of him, or
it's hard to say. They could be. Either way, it could be. They could have tricked him and got him up there, and he could be captured in that tree. They could have him prisoner, and Bran could be the next one. He could be trying to escape. He could be trying to get out of there and use Bran to escape, because we've seen Vlad where he didn't want to take another body because he didn't want to lose his powers. You know, he wanted to keep his powers, so it could be a way for Bloodraven, if he can escape through Bran, to still maintain his powers.
I totally agree with Tony.
I totally disagree with Tony.
I think, but
LML is wrong.
Yeah,
always bet on black.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't bet.
I'm not even sure if Bloodraven is even Bloodraven, because the whole thing is like the children of the forest. Like they said, their numbers are not that big, and then green seers among them are even more rare. So if like their last green seer died out, the only way that they could maintain that power would be to get a human with the same power. So,
which is an obvious question that we're presented with, like, why do they need Bloodraven?
why do they have a human sitting the Weirwood throne, right?
And even weirder, they have all these singers that are sitting on Weirwood thrones that seem to be like far gone, but
Yeah.
they still are kind of alive. So
Yeah.
it's like they've had a bunch of human singers, but maybe they don't have any more or something.
Yeah, I feel like it's a body snatching type of thing. Like Bran is just the next one. They got
I'm hearing
Bloodraven.
some chat. Anybody have comments on that?
Well, I'm just thinking, like, no, he was tricked. Like, it's like the bowl of blood with food for Bran. It's not like, oh, I want to feed you because we love you and we like you. Whereas here, oh, fuck no, we love
Here, eat your friend. It'll make you stronger.
Yeah.
Except for they didn't tell him that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
sort of slipped it on him in a little ways because he tried to do things like, fix things that didn't work out.
Yeah.
Well, and he does already have like magical, like he's got magical blood anyway.
Yeah.
Brendan Rivers he's got, kind of like John, like he's got blood of the first name, and then he's got Targaryen blood, so.
You can see why the children might have recruited Bloodraven up to the
Yeah.
wall for sure.
They're thinking, well, shit, we gotta use one, we better use him.
Yeah.
So sort of ties in with the drowned god and the children of the forest, including Bran and Bloodraven. So Jojen didn't have the green sight until he drowned in the box, and then as Mira talks about it, then his eyes turned green, and that's when he had the green sight and could see into the future and knew what he was supposed to do. If they can control people like that, the children of the forest, that got him to bring Bran up.
Okay, so she's bringing up the fact that, and I forgot about this, that Jojen apparently did not manifest his green sight until he had some sort of drowning in the bog experience. And this is just another echo of the Odin metaphor of sacrificing your physical self in order to gain, third eye magical vision. And so you're raising the additional point that perhaps that moment of death or near death creates an opening for Bloodraven to start, projecting stuff in there. That makes a lot of
And you
sense.
could see Bloodraven doing crazy, stupid stuff for that whole thing. When Bran climbs up to the tree and he goes up there, right, and he sees he's feeding crows, right, and the crows want corn. It's the same thing that that goes on with Mormont Raven. This is Bloodraven. He's the one who's influencing Bran to climb up there to get pushed out from the beginning.
Yes.
He's the one who pulled that. He's the one who got Jojen to come to Bran. He's the one who did. When you see it, when in the show a little bit, you see him over there, and Bran's got an arrow, bow and arrow, and he's trying to shoot the Raven. He's like, Jojen, you can't kill it. It's you.
Yeah.
You are the Raven. That's you. In the show, when you see Bran, last time you see Bloodraven, he says, you have to become me. And then Bran's eyes roll back in his head like he's being walked. When you see Bran meet the White Walker King, the Night's King, he's in Bloodraven's dream. He goes over from his tree and touches Bloodraven's tree and is walking around as Bloodraven, nowhere to be found, but all the White Walkers, Night's King just happens to be there, and all the White Walkers just happen to be
You
there.
need to know that Night's King killed Bloodraven. They're both in the same room, right?
Well,
Same time.
we are led to believe that he killed that physical form of his body, but if he already jumped
All
into
right.
Bran,
Okay.
that body, it wouldn't matter if that
All right.
body is
no,
gone.
that's
you know
internally
what I mean?
consistent tinfoil, at least.
Yeah, all my tinfoil is consistent at least.
Well, that's the whole thing. So in the back.
Well, I can see where it's going with Bran. Perhaps he might be dark. But the problem I have with that is ultimately, I just read this chapter actually, is that when Jojen came in and met with Bran, and all he wanted to do was see the werewolf, the direwolf. So basically, and then he says that his father sent him. So, because of his dream. So ultimately, is that what George is saying? I mean, could it be the ultimate thing that happens is that if Bran is a bad guy or dark, could Ned's best friend has sent his kids north of the wall to send Bran to that? I just don't see that.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I just don't see George saying that in the end, is that, oh, by the way, your best friend was the one who sent your kids that brought you to the...
No, I mean, it's hard to call anybody outside of, like, Ramsay and the Mountain evil. I mean, there's always... I mean, obviously, every character's got the gray areas, and they're being tempted with things, and is it right to do something dishonorable in order to achieve a greater end for more people? And I think you can just see a lot of those echoes in Bran's plot, too, but I don't think he's any more, evil than other people.
I don't know if Bran's evil, but he's being set up. You know what I mean? He's being kicked and tricked, and Bran may figure out a way out of it in the end. He may see what's going on, and maybe he can figure out. Because as we deal with the show real quick, if he tells Bran, he's like, listen, if you stay too long, you're going to get stuck. They're not saying that just as a throwaway line. That means someone's got to get stuck, right? It has to happen. Someone's got to go back and get stuck. And he has knowledge of this. So something must have happened. That leads me like to Summerhall and all that situation. And when you hear like the Mad King becoming mad and everything else. And before that, his son having dragon dreams all of a sudden. That's why he went to Summerhall in the first place. This is, to me, it's Bloodraven hitting him with these dreams.
And speaking of staying too long, getting stuck, it is 1:52. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
A lot of fun.
That's what we call a segue.
Yeah.
A very special thank you to all of my patrons and everyone who donated to the Con of Thrones fundraiser live stream. I couldn't have done it without you, so I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks, everyone. From the bottom of my fiery, fiery heart.